Is Fable 5, Anthropic's newest AI model, actually the most powerful model we've ever seen, to a point where it's too powerful that the public actually can't get it, and Anthropic's program of releasing it for the next 2 weeks was too advantageous that they had to take it off? Or is this IPO hype, or why did this happen? Today we're going to look at what happened over this last weekend and the events that unfolded. So what is Fable 5? Before we talk about Fable 5, we're going to have to go back a step. This is AI, Anthropic's most powerful AI model they talked about. We could talk about the timelines, but here is the overall benchmarks they've talked about. And we can see here in AGI coding, it's almost up to 250%, along with the spatial reasoning. This is the benchmarks they released for Mythos and Fable 5. And we're talking about Mythos because this is the original product. And we go to the next part. What is Fable 5? Fable 5 is kind of the safe version of Mythos as it's been explained to us in the public. Mythos 5 is its purest form, the trusted access, what the safeguards have. This is allegedly what the DOW and the DOD have access to, or other trusted entities. And Fable 5 is what allegedly Anthropic's been working on in the last couple weeks that allows us to access the same Mythos model, but in more guardrails and more safety. There are articles about Anthropic internal teams talking about using Mythos and how they're able to access different security parameters and how it actually possibly presented cybersecurity and other possible access. So what's going on and why is Fable 5 Anthropic's most powerful model? So let's go back to the timeline. April 7th, this is the first. We've heard rumors about this, and there's other entries we saw. We saw here that this is according to Axio, that Anthropic holds this Mythos model and it possibly has this hacking risk. And this is when we kind of first got this onto the scene. April 7th, this is I think around the time Opus 4.7 released. And so Opus 4.6 was early in the year, and Opus 4.7, I believe, dropped around this time. And then this is when Anthropic's trying to build more hype, possibly, or just more talking about the concerns about Mythos. And so when we're looking at this is kind of when we start hearing about Mythos and this Project Glasswing and this AI, Anthropic's new AI tool. Because before this, it was Opus, which was Anthropic's best tool, and a lot of people loved, including myself, love Opus 4.6. And we're experimenting with 4.7, 4.8, but this is the timeline we're looking at. And then after we hear about this, moving on, just a month and a half or so later, we hear about there's this confidential filing for Anthropic's IPO. Going, okay, now they setting the stage for IPO? What are they actually trying to do? Is this model they're looking at something to help their IPO hype, or is this the pathway they're looking towards to having a successful IPO later this year? They don't have an exact date yet. I think based on the articles I've been reading, it looks like September earlier, but now we see this a confidential filing for IPO. This is reported from the New York Times. Next, which was a surprise to everybody, that Fable 5 actually got launched to the public, which is Mythos version. And Anthropic released it saying, hey, for general use, which was max, which I think it was max, and the 5x, 10x packages, you get access for that till June 22nd, and that window is going to get closed. And so Claude dropped this out of nowhere. I think it was on a Wednesday. And so they dropped the fact that you can access Fable 5 and start working with it for the next couple weeks. And this is a huge excitement amongst the AI community because everyone was already very happy with Opus 4.6. Opus 4.7, 4.8 had mixed reviews when it came out. But Anthropic has the best AI model out there to the public, and the fact they released a more powerful version that we could access for 2 weeks with our paid plans was awesome to see. But then what happened is Amazon over the weekend reached out to DOW saying, hey, Fable 5, and we were able to jailbreak it and access the Mythos, the way more powerful model without the safeguards. And part of this I forgot to mention is that if you were using Fable 5 and you tried doing anything that possibly presented security concerns, it would automatically reset your model to Opus 4.8. So if you ever started asking any questions that felt out of the realm of that were possible security issues or anything they had guardrails for Fable 5, they would kick you to Opus 4.8. And Amazon, they saw this on June 12th, and they presented it to the DOJ. And within a few hours of them getting the information, the DOW came out and stated, hey, you have 90 minutes to shut this down. We don't know the full cybersecurity risks of what has occurred, but we believe that somebody's been able to access the Fable 5 model and get the full access to Mythos, which is the highly coveted model that we've been talking about for a few months. Now somebody's been able to access it. You got to shut this down. This was just within a few days. We go just back. I mean, June 9th was when it were launched, and within 3 days, 72 hours, they're already getting a call to shut this down. This has caused larger issues where other governments are saying it's too at the whim of other U.S. agents. This U.S. agency has a high restriction of what models are not available to the public. We don't know really if Mythos is being used by the DOW or the government, or who has access to Mythos exactly, and the fact that the public is only able to have access to Fable 5 for just 3 days, and people were loving it, and it got cut off with kind of this rumor possibly, or we don't know, alleged concerns of jailbreaking. We'll find out more in the next couple of days. Really concerns about what the overall dynamic is of the AI models and other governments trying to use this. And this is what Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of the Canada, was talking about. And since this model got pulled at 10 p.m. U.S. time, it really drives a concern of what autonomy these AI companies truly have versus how much involvement the U.S. does have with these AI companies. And so when we talk about this, why does this all matter? And when we look at it, really, there's a few possibilities. Anthropic's Fable 5 or Mythos AI tool is that powerful, it could be considered almost some version of a weapon or something to that realm where maybe, if you give somebody, a handgun, you can go through the permitting process, but you can't just buy like a fighter jet. So it's possible this Mythos model is entirely that powerful that it's become strategic infrastructure and might be co-opted by the the U.S. government, and maybe these models that are public might get not necessarily privatized, but might just be government only access. You might see some security protocols. We're already seeing some of this rumors that they might be only allowing Fable 5 access to U.S. There's still more research to come. We'll give you more updates in the next couple of days about what's going on there. And that's when they see this sovereign access risk. This model has become national security in just 3 days, basically. I mean, and if this is going on with Fable 5's first launch ever, who knows what future iterations are going to be like? Is this going to happen when OpenAI goes from 5.5 GPT to some other more advanced model, or more LLM hyperscalers coming along? How are they going to regulate this, or does this need regulation? This really does add the question of what access risks exist now, and it's kind of, as this Fable 5 has really possibly got jailbroken to Mythos, really drives that question. It really drives the third point, the build for flexibility. These abstraction layers and the evolution, the ability for swapping models. I personally like planning my tasking with Opus and then executing with Sonnet. This, I was really enjoying doing that with planning with Fable and executing with Sonnet, and it was significantly better. But it's just starting to ask these questions of building for flexibility. Can you rely too much on a single model? What happens if you're using Opus, let's say Opus 4.9 drops or Opus 5, and you get reliant on how that operates, and then before you start build your business on top of that, and then the next day it gets cut from underneath you. You have sub-agents, you have skills built directly for that. And when you're operating with a business with $1 million plus revenue yearly, it can have dramatic changes on how you're trying to operate. And so we have to start looking at building for flexibility. And when I look at this, I see three kind of problems coming, or three questions I'm starting to ask. Is this going to be an ongoing issue? Because these AI models are only going to get better. I mean, I remember using before Opus 4.6. The difference between Opus 4.6 and previous Anthropic models is night and day. 4.6 was really a game changer in the entire AI world. I don't really love Opus 4.7 or 4.8, but Opus 4.6 really drove and possibly, it caused maybe possibly OpenAI to drop 5.5, and OpenAI 5.5, GPT 5.5 was a significant upgrade to what they were using in the past. And so these models are just going to get better as the compute gets better, as the training gets better, as there's more data, more users. And so is this just going to be a beginning? Is this going to be an ongoing problem where Anthropic, OpenAI, Gemini, XAI drops a new AI model and it's up for a few days and you get access to it, and then before you know it, the legs are cut on from under you and it's gone? It's a real question we really start considering. Moving from there, it's like the snowball effect. Is this going to cause AI regulation? The midterms are coming up in about 6 months. We're going to see this be a platform people run on. Or is this actually something that is security concern? Do we really need to look at enforcing AI regulation? Because if it's true that these tools are that powerful that they can be used by foreign governments or by individual actors that can possibly hack security concerns, do we need to start looking at AI regulation? Because right now there's basically no AI regulation. California's introduced some policies, but they're very loose, just basic frameworks that have been started. So we're going to see this S-curve of the acceleration come to the top, where possibly now you're going to add AI regulation. You're going to have to go through review board processes through the government, or what is that going to look like? And this kind of precedent, especially since these are private companies, they're not public companies yet. Going back to the IPO, these are private companies. At what point does AI regulation apply to public companies, private companies, and how is that going to work? And then what I see, and I've been seeing this the last couple of months, is this really going to accelerate the movement to localize AI? And what I mean by that is, you can right now get like a Mac Mini or some other high computer and download a AI model to your computer, a DeepSeek or Kimi or something of that sort. Or not Kimi, but you could download an AI model to your computer and just run off your computer. And then it's not going to be as good as these high-end models, but if you get an 80% solution, especially if you have great sub-agents and skills, you might be able to get away with using a localized agent, localized AI infrastructure versus relying on these cloud tools. And if that becomes a case, I already see it so much about localizing AI. I can see this accelerating that movement. I already see a bunch of the high-end YouTubers already talking about it. And I think it might localize AI. It's going to drive hardware cost, or are people going to start relying more on Chinese models such as DeepSeek? Because they can download and localize it and just run off their computers versus having to rely on American companies. Is this going to impact Anthropic or OpenAI's IPO later this year? That's another question, especially if this keeps happening to them. It's a great question that I'm going to be looking at the next couple weeks or so. But this is just kind of explaining the timeline of what's happened just this last weekend with Fable 5 and the possible effects we're going to see from it. But I'll keep you guys updated as I find more out, and I'll talk to you in the next video. Thank you all. Bye.